Want to kind of point to this picture here. That is not a medieval torture device, although some people might think so. We'll get into that a little bit later, but this message is on relationships. And starting off, I just wanted to talk about how men and women are different. You know, men and women are equal. They're created by God equally, but they're different. And I've heard the expression, men see the world through blue sunglasses, women see it through pink sunglasses. I've heard a couple different kind of just takes on that where men and women are different. And actually, we have enough time. I've got this kind of funny story to illustrate that I heard once. So let's say there's a guy named Roger. He's attracted to this woman named Elaine, and he asks her out for a movie. She accepts, they have a pretty good time. A few nights later, he asks her out for dinner, and again, they enjoy themselves. So they continue seeing each other regularly, and after a while, they don't see anybody else except each other. So then one evening, when they're driving home, a thought occurs to Elaine. And she says it out loud without really thinking, "Roger, do you realize that as of tonight, we've been seeing each other for exactly 6 months?" And then there's silence in the car. And to Elaine, this seems like a very loud silence. She thinks to herself, "I wonder if it bothers him that what I said. Maybe he's been feeling conflicted by our relationship. Maybe he thinks I'm trying to push him into some kind of obligation that he doesn't want or isn't sure of." And Roger is thinking, "Gosh, 6 months." And Elaine is thinking, "But hey, I'm not sure I want this kind of relationship either. Sometimes I wish I had a little more space, so I'd have time to think about whether I really want to keep going the way we are, moving steadily towards, what are we going? Where are we going? Are we just going to keep seeing each other at this level of intimacy? Are we heading towards marriage, towards children, towards a life together? Am I ready for that level of commitment? Do I really even know this person?" And Roger's still thinking. So that means it was, let's see, February when we started going out, which was right after I had the car at the dealer's, which means, let me check the odometer. Whoa, I'm way overdue for an oil change here. And Elaine is thinking, he's upset. I can see it on his face. Maybe I'm reading this completely wrong. Maybe he wants more from our relationship, more intimacy, more commitment. Maybe he sensed it, even before I sensed it, that I was feeling some reservations. Yes, I bet that's it. That's why he's so reluctant to say anything about how he's feeling. He's afraid of being rejected. And Roger's thinking, and I'm going to have them look at the transmission again. I don't want those morons to say it's still not changing gears right. And they better not blame it on the cold weather this time. What cold weather? It's late spring. And the thing is changing like a darn garbage truck. And I paid those fools $600. And Elaine is thinking, he's angry. I don't blame him. I'd be angry too. I feel so guilty for putting him through this, but I can't help the way I feel. I'm just not sure. And Roger's thinking, they'll probably say it's only a 90-day warranty. That's exactly what they're going to say, those scumbags. And Elaine is thinking, maybe I'm just too idealistic, waiting for a knight to come riding up on his white horse when I'm sitting right next to a perfectly good person, a person I enjoy being with, a person I truly care about, a person who seems to truly care about me, a person who's in pain because of my self-centered schoolgirl romantic fantasy. And Roger's thinking, warranty? They want a warranty? I'll give them a warranty. I'll take their warranty and stick it right up there. Roger? Elaine says aloud. What? Says Roger, startled. Please don't torture yourself like this, she says, her eyes brimming with tears. Maybe I should never have. I feel so. And she breaks down sobbing. What? Roger says. I'm such a fool, Elaine sobs. I know there's no knight. I really know that. It's silly. There's no knight. There's no horse. There's no horse, says Roger. You think I'm a fool, don't you? Says Elaine. No, says Roger, glad to finally know a correct answer. It's just that I need some time, Elaine says. There's a 15-second pause while Roger, thinking as fast as he can, tries to come up with a safe response. Finally, he comes up with one that he thinks works. Yes, he says. Elaine, deeply moved, touches his hand. "Oh, Roger, do you really feel that way?" She says. "What way?" says Roger. "That way about time?" says Elaine. "Oh," says Roger, "yes." Elaine turns to face him and gazes deeply into his eyes, causing him to become very nervous about what she might say next, especially if it involves a horse. At last, she speaks. "Thank you, Roger," she says. "Thank you," says Roger. Then he takes her home, and she lies on her bed, a conflicted, tortured soul, and weeps until dawn, whereas when Roger gets back to his place, he opens a bag of chips, turns on the TV, and immediately becomes deeply involved in a return of a tennis match between two Czechoslovakians he's never heard of. A tiny voice in the far recesses of his mind tells him that something major was going on back there in the car, but he's pretty sure there's no way he would ever understand what, so he figures it's better to just keep thinking about it. The next day, Elaine will call her closest friends, or perhaps two of them, and they will talk about this situation for 6 hours straight, in painstaking detail, while they analyze everything she said and everything he said, going over it time and time again, exploring every word, expression, and gesture for nuances of meaning, considering every possible ramification. They will continue this discussion. They will continue to discuss this subject on and off for weeks, maybe months, never reaching a definite conclusion, but never getting bored with it either. Meanwhile, Roger, while playing tennis one day with a mutual friend of his and Elaine's, will pause just before serving, frown, and say, "Norm, did Elaine ever own a horse?" That is just a funny story I heard once about how guys and girls are different, and it's not meant to poke fun at either gender, but it does pretty well represent how guys and girls are different. They're just wired different, they think differently. I know with my fiance, I sometimes get into trouble. She will come to me with just her day, and I will try to fix everything. I will try to offer suggestions. I'll try to, hey, next time do this or do this, and she'll just say, "Stop," and just listen. Just listen to me. You don't have to fix everything, but that's how I was wired, is to try to fix things. But the first point I want to make is men and women represent and display equally parts of God. Equal parts of God. So men and women represent and display equal parts of God. Can someone please read Genesis 1:27?
So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them.
So again, God created both man and women together in his image. So together as a team, we are meant to represent the full nature of God, the full image of God. Now, this doesn't mean you can't represent God by yourself. I know not all of us are married or anything, so that doesn't disqualify you from anything. But together, man and woman were made for this purpose. Now, Paul talks a lot about being single because he was never married. And plenty of strong Christian followers have done a lot of great things for God, grown with God, followed God, and not gotten married. So it's not, like I said, it's not a requirement for you to grow more with God, you have to be married. That's not the case. And many people kind of feel this, so I want to make this clear. You do not have to get married. Okay? You do not have to get married. If it comes to you and you're blessed with it, great, enjoy it. But if not, don't feel like you have to get married. Your life will not be any more meaningful or any less meaningful if you don't. All right? So that's the guy who's getting married in 5 weeks. Okay? But can someone please read 1 Corinthians 7, 32 through 35?
I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs. How can he please the Lord? But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world. How can he please his wife? And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit, but a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world. How can she please her husband? I am saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord.
Thank you. So getting married will not complete you. You know, it's not that fairy tale like if I just get married, my life will be great. I'll have a best friend that I'm married to and everything will be happy. That's not the case. I want us to be content in our walk with Christ. That's the main issue, is to be content in your walk with Christ. You should be happy to have your own personal time with God. There's no obligations besides Him. You know, you should enjoy that time with Him while you're single. You don't need to go seeking after a relationship. You know, if it comes to you, it comes to you. Let God's plan work itself out. Let God's plan unfold. We should desire God more than a mate. And that's something I ran into a lot growing up. From late grade school up until the beginning of college, my main focus was finding a girlfriend to eventually marry, and, you know, white picket fence style. And I was not content in my walk with Christ. I desired someone else to be married to more than I desired God. And you ever have those times when you look back on your life and you say, what was I thinking? Clearly, you know, I was silly or dumb or whatever. That is one of my moments, is I was definitely not spiritually mature enough, regularly mature enough. I had a lot of issues that I was dealing with, but I just thought if I found a girlfriend that everything would be okay, you know, I would become a much better person, and all these things that I tried to convince myself that I needed this other person to make me a better person, but that's not the case. And my fiance and I right now, we kind of have this saying, and it's going to sound a little weird, but we like to tell each other that we don't need the other person, but we want the other person. And that's something that we realized after we had both grown with God by ourselves and realized that we need God. He's the only person in our life that we need. And having the other person in our relationship is just a tremendous blessing. We don't need each other, but we want each other. And that's a very, I guess, profound statement to view it in that light, to view God as the only need that you need. And that's what He desires, is for us to have that need for Him. So desiring God more than we desire a mate. And I kind of wanted to paint this picture. Like, think about, you are with someone who is attractive, you're attracted to them, they're attracted to you, you like them, but they're a really bad influence on you. They aren't helping you go spiritually. In fact, they're actually stunting your growth. Who would you rather choose? Would you rather choose God or that person? And that's kind of something I wanted to challenge you a little bit with, is, are you putting God first, or are you putting that other person first? And to kind of go along with this topic, I wanted to talk about being unequally yoked. And that's what that picture was when we first turned the PowerPoint on. It was a yoke, and I've got some other pictures of it after we read 2 Corinthians 6:14.
Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?
So this is a picture of a yoke in action. You see the animals have their necks in there, they're side by side, they're together, and this was meant for farmers to use to pull things, to work. So God uses this example in 2 Corinthians to talk to us about being yoked together with someone else. Now, both animals pull equally, They pull together, they pull as a team. So if you have someone who is unequally yoked, one person might pull faster or pull harder or pull stronger than the other person. And then you get a whole mess of arguing, or the wagon doesn't do its job, things fall apart. When he talks about being equally yoked, he is talking about finding someone who is of equal with you, someone who is spiritually mature like you, someone who has the same core beliefs as you, someone that you have some things in common with, preferably God and following Him. And it is unhealthy for you to be unequally yoked. It would cause a lot of problems, like I said, and it would not be good for you. They might, lead you astray, or it's very difficult to work with someone who's unequally yoked. So that's what that means, to be equally yoked with someone. And along with this topic, we shouldn't pick the wrong person just because you want a relationship. If you're in one and you don't feel like you're equally yoked, I challenge you to become single. It's okay to be single. Think about what that would do for your relationship with God. If the person that you are involved in a relationship with doesn't see eye to eye with your view of God and how you follow Him, see what that would do cutting ties with them. I know it sounds kind of harsh, but it's a reality that you should think about, that seeking after God is the most important thing in your life. Everyone on earth was single at one point, so it's normal. Okay? You don't have to have a relationship. You're in college, it's okay to meet people, it's okay to date, but you need to be mature about it, and you need to follow a biblical example of it. And I want to ask you an important question. Where are you getting your relationship advice from? Is it from movies, from books, from the internet, or from friends? I've had a lot of really close friends give me some really bad dating advice. And it's just a fact of life. Everyone has different opinions on dating, everyone's been through different experiences. You have your own experiences, and then you have God's Word. And those two together should lead you down a really great dating path. So moving on, I wanted to look at some biblical examples of not really dating, because they didn't exactly date in the Bible, but they are some strong relationships in the Bible of a husband and wife, and that's what I want to check out right now. So first, we'll look at Abraham and Sarah from the Old Testament. So just a little bit of backstory. Abraham was a very wealthy man. He had lots of cattle and sheep and lots of land. And God came to him one day and said, Abraham, I want you to move far away, pick up all your stuff, go, and I will make you a great nation. I will make your name strong. I will make your people strong. I will give you lots of grandchildren, as numerous as the stars in the sky, a whole big promise. And Abraham, following his heart, said, no thanks, I've got lots of stuff here. I'm rich, I'm pretty wealthy, I'm okay here. He felt that was right, so he just did it. Now that's not what Abraham did. Abraham followed God's promise. He didn't follow his heart. I know a lot of movies say, follow your heart, just do it, do what's right, go with your gut, all that stuff. All that stuff's wrong. Okay, following your heart is a very bad idea. Troy used this verse last week, and I'm going to use it again. Can someone please read Jeremiah 17:19?
This is what the Lord said to me. Go and stand at the gate of the people, through which the kings of Judah go in and out. Stand.
Is that 17, Jeremiah 17:19? Is it? Okay. Well, that's a typo. But
Verse 9.
Yeah, verse 9. Try 17:9. Maybe.
The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can stand, or who can understand?
Right, thank you. So that verse says, the heart is deceitful above all else. God knows that. God tells us that in His Word. And if we follow our heart, it will probably deceive us. So if we follow God and His promises, He will lead us down the right path. But Abraham could have followed his heart and said, God's blessed me with a lot of stuff. I could just stay put and be okay. But he decided to go out and follow God's promises with a heart of total faith. So that's what we need to do. We need to follow God's promises with a heart of total faith. And Abraham trusted that God would make him a great nation. And can someone please read Genesis 15:6?
And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness.
So Abraham was considered righteous because he acted in faith and trusted in God's promises. And Sarah, it says, trusted in God also in Hebrews 11:11. Can someone please read that?
By faith, oh, there we go. Sorry. By faith, Abraham, even though he was past age and Sarah herself was barren, was enabled to become a father because he considered him faithful who had made the promise.
So Sarah trusted God would strengthen her to conceive even in her old age. So God promised Abraham and Sarah a son, but nothing was happening. So Abraham, even though he had faith that God would give him a son, kind of manipulated the promise and tried to do things on his own. And he gets into the whole situation with Hagar, and he tries to have a child with Sarah's servant, and it causes a huge mess. But the point here is that we can make loopholes to try to manipulate God's promises and God's word and try to justify anything we want. And that's what I don't want us to do. There are no loopholes in God's promises. If He says something will happen, it will happen, whether we try to manipulate it or not. We can try to do that and probably screw things up. Not that God can't fix our screw-ups, but when He makes a promise, He intends to fulfill it by Himself all the way. And, Abraham was worried that they were getting old and that they weren't having a kid, so he tried to alter things, to change things, and if you read the story, you know how that causes problems. God does not require perfection, only progress. And this is a really cool statement from a book that my fiance and I are reading called A Couple After God's Own Heart. And it's a really nice book to just read together as a couple and see how trusting in God and how following Him really brings together a relationship after God's own heart. In the Bible, it says Abraham and Sarah were as good as dead. There's a verse that says that. And I thought it's really funny that it says that. But Abraham and Sarah were not perfect. They were really old for having a kid. But God didn't care about that. He only cared about their progression together as a couple in faith, in following Him. And I can tell you, my fiance and I aren't perfect either. But we follow after God. We try to grow together. And we try to show that progression in growing with Him, and He honors that by blessing us. So each day is another opportunity for you to have faith in God's promises for your life. As you observe Abraham and Sarah traveling together for decades and listening to God and following hard after Him, even when they don't know where they're going, you see their faith in action. So we need to put our faith in action. And no matter what circumstances you're in now, whether you're single or in a relationship, or how many unwise decisions you've made in those categories, or how tough it gets to trust God, waiting patiently on Him, remember His truths. Remember His promises. Could someone please read Psalm 37:4?
Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart.
So our number one desire should be Him. And if that desire is sought, then all other desires will please Him. And that's what I kind of want us to take away from tonight, is that verse. I like that verse a lot. And it took a lot of life experiences to realize that. But once I did, it's true. It's absolute truth. If you seek after God first, He will give you the desires of your heart. The next biblical couple I'd like to look at is Isaac and Rebekah. So again, a little backstory. Abraham has his son Isaac, finally, and Isaac grows up, and Abraham sends out his servant to look for a mate for Isaac. So he sends out his servant, and his servant prays for a sign, and we'll read about that in Genesis 24:12 through 15.
Then he prayed, Lord God of my master Abraham, make me successful today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside the spring, and the daughter of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a young woman, please let down your jar, that I may have a drink. And she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too. Let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor.
All right, so in the story, the servant prays this prayer, and boom, prayer answered. Now, God doesn't work like that every time, but something we can draw from this story is that prayer is important. Prayer is very important. Whether you're single or in a relationship, be sure to pray about the situation that you're in. Be sure to pray. Just pray. Make your desires known to God. Ask for clarification. Pray. And, with this story kind of happening the way it did, you would think that this was a match made in heaven, right? Now, this has just got to be, some sort of crazy God story, match made in heaven. How do we get a match made in heaven? Well, the truth is, once a couple is married, it's a match made in heaven, because God ordained marriage, God designed marriage, and regardless of how your relationship got started, it becomes a binding union when you get married. Can someone please read Mark 10:7 through 9?
For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh, so they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate.
So marriage is meant to last. It doesn't mean it'll be perfect, But God wants you to make it work for His glory and your joy. And in marriage, you have to take time to make it work. Even in a relationship. That's one thing I've learned is you have to take time to make it work. Can someone please read Ephesians 5:22, and then the next person can read Ephesians 5:25.
Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord.
Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her.
So there, Paul is talking about wives submitting to your husbands and husbands loving your wives. It's a two-way street. It requires both people to commit to each other. And digging a little bit deeper, when it says wives submit to your husbands, Paul used an interesting word in submit. He didn't use obey, which was the custom back then, where wives would simply obey whatever their husband said, even if they were harsh, even if they were cruel to them. The Roman law was wives had to obey their husbands. But Paul here says submit to your husbands. And he says that to kind of put some clarification. Submitting to your husband would be to submit to his authority if it was following Christ. If he didn't follow Christ, wives were not, I don't want to say not required, but they weren't simply to just obey a harsh husband. And Paul addresses both wives and husbands in that and telling them, wives, submit to your husbands, husbands, love your wives. That's how marriage was designed to work. So if you really love your partner, you will make an effort to show it. You know, Isaac prayed for his wife all the time because she was barren for many years, going back to prayer being important. He loved her and he showed his love by doing things for her. So to conclude, I just want to quick look at some purposes for our relationships. So one purpose for our relationship is to grow closer with God. Whether you're single or together, God wants us to grow closer with Him. In a relationship, it requires commitment, sacrifice, and communication. And that's something I've learned just being in a relationship. Commitment, sacrifice, and communication. You know, I don't want to say that I have to sacrifice a lot of things getting married because they're really trivial things. Like I can't put Michigan football posters all over my apartment like I want to do. I can't do that. I can't leave the toilet seat up all the time, which is something I'm very used to. I can't eat in my Lazy Boy anymore. That's something I am used to doing, and I can't drink straight out of the bottle of orange juice or milk or whatever it is. Even though I can convince myself I'm not dirtying up a glass, those are all things that I need to sacrifice when I get married, but I am joyfully sacrificing them because that's what my wife wants. That's what my future wife wants. Practicing commitment, sacrifice, and communication are all things that will help you grow with God also. You know, you have to change your mindset from it's not just me, it's her also. You have to care for her needs, her spiritual growth, providing for her. And likewise, she has to worry about my needs, you know, helping me out, being my helper. And that's something that is kind of a microcosm of our relationship with God, is growing with Him, growing with another person, and just experiencing life together. Another purpose of our relationship is to have faith in His promises. I talked about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rachel and Rebecca. Just having faith in His promises. This is another opportunity for you to put your trust in God and allow Him to lead your life. You might not know exactly where your future is going with your future wife, but putting that faith in God is what He desires. And you can bring Him glory by patiently waiting and faithfully expecting to come through in whatever your situation, single, married, whatever. Putting your faith in Him and trusting Him and just expecting Him to come through for you. And lastly, A purpose of our relationship is to desire God's heart. We need to want what He wants for us, not what we want. He knows what's best for us, and He'll bring it about in the right times and in the right circumstances. Sometimes we get so full of ourselves thinking, I'm ready for this, I'm ready for that, I've shown that, I think this. It doesn't matter what we think, it matters what God thinks. And desiring God's heart is what He wants for us. He wants us to follow Him and not follow ourselves. So the last question I want to challenge you with is, do you desire God's heart for your relationship or your own? And that's something I want you to take out this week into your everyday life and just think about that. For your future, for your present, do you desire God's heart for your relationship or your own? Thanks, guys. Please pray with me.